No, it doesn't matter. It's fine. Let's see. Okay. So let's get started with just a brief tour of everything we're looking at in here. All right. So this is the main computer down here that runs everything. It's just a Mac Studio. Next to it is a expansion chassis that houses the expansion cards for Pro Tools. That's what allows us to get like the extra processing power for Pro Tools, their professional ultimate version. Those you don't really need to worry about, but what I do want you to take special look into is these two things right here. I want you to think about those as your interfaces. Those are your little like Scarletts or Apollos or whatever you're using there, Apogees or whatever. The only difference is there's 16 channels on each in and out, and there's also no preamps in them. All of the stuff in here is preamped externally and then goes into those at a line level. Let's see here. Okay, then we're going to move on to the S6 board. The S6 board, what's really important about this is it's not a mixing board, even though it looks like one. It is just a controller for Pro Tools. So if I create a track in Pro Tools, fader comes up, and we can use it to control the fader in Pro Tools. That's what that section does. It does it pretty well. You can mix on there. It's kind of nice. But other than that, and we got transport, play, and pause controls here and everything like that. But other than that, the only other, to make this room work, the only other section we're going to be dealing with is this little monitor section right here. Because besides control Pro Tools, what this thing does is it allows you to control the speaker volume, the mute, and the talkback. Those are the main things with that. Volume knob is right here. So if we were to play something through here, let me just do a signal generator. You can control the volume here, and hitting the knob will mute everything. So the mute is very important. I'm going to ask you where the mute is, where the volume knob is, and also where the talkback is. We didn't go over this yet, but on the headphone unit over there, I don't know if you can see it's lighting up on 1 and 2 of the headphones in there. So we'll go over that later. But that's how you're going to communicate in between the rooms. Now with the, actually let's go over the HearBack unit right now. In there, and we'll look at this later, there are little headphone stations. There's at least one in there, and you can plug into it, and you'll hear everything that comes out of the speakers. So the stuff that comes out of the speakers automatically goes to channels 1 and 2 on the headphones, as does the talkback when I talk into it. That means as long as the 1 and 2 are turned up on there, you should be able to hear the whole mix. We can also do custom mixes and stuff with the other inputs.
Sorry.
What's it?
When you get a second, the server's offline in the
Oh, okay. Justin D?
iLock. The iLock.
Yeah, that's usually. I'll go and check it out.
Yeah.
Do you know where we're at?
Okay, so where was that? Let's move on from that for a second. We'll go and take a look at the headphones later. Up here is the patch bay. That's the interconnectivity of the whole room. You guys are in 250 right now, so we're not going to go crazy with that. But just know that that's where you're going to be able to patch things, microphone inputs to different preamps into different Pro Tools inputs, all of that good stuff, but that's more of a 256 thing. We'll get into that more. And if anybody's really interested, though, we can go into that in depth later on. Then over here we have we have our line level interfaces over here, we have our preamp sets down here. Let's go into this room for a second.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm a soccer person on earth. I felt that.
Okay, so if you look right over there, behind you, there's a wall input with 8 inputs, labeled 1 through 8. Behind you, there's another one labeled 9 through 16, and then there's some patchable ones that aren't normal into the board, 17 and 18 down there. Let's just go back in. I'll show you the rest. Let's see. why did I show you those? Because they correspond directly to these. These preamps, if you go into there and plug into channel 1, it's right here. These preamps have 4 channels each, for a total of 16. So input 1 goes here, 1. Input 2 goes to 2. Input 3 goes to channel 3. Input 4 goes to channel 4. 5 goes to channel 5 on this next preamp, and so on and so forth, all the way down to 16. So one of the questions I'll be asking you is, if I plug in number 5, where does it go? And you're going to answer number 5 down here. Let's see here. Okay, cool. So, and then over here is a bunch of outboard gear that we can use for mixing or for tracking. There's a couple preamps, like the Heritage Audio preamps. These Neve clones are really good. They have to be patched in through the patch bay, so if you're in a session, just grab me or whatever if you don't know how to do that. We don't really cover it in the proficiency test. Some compressors, these Joe Meek channel strips are very good. But those are all patchable things that can be accessed through the patch bay then. Let's see here. All right, so let's go on to like the session setup and the test and everything. So the way the test is going to work is I'm going to be your artist. You guys are going to be the engineers or producers. And we're basically going to set up a mock session. I'm going to ask you some questions first. This is before we get started with anything. What are the 3 types of microphones? Go. What's one?
Dynamic.
Condenser?
I forget. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
It would be ribbon, right?
Ribbon. So which one? So you're gonna need to review that because you're gonna need to know that anyway. It's gonna be and then the next question is gonna be which one gets phantom power.
Condenser.
Which one never gets phantom power?
Ribbon.
Ribbon.
Yeah, ribbon. Don't get that one wrong, or I legally have to fail you. I really do. I don't like to because that means I have to do this all over again, but I have to fail on certain questions, and I'll let you know which ones those are. Yeah, and then I'm going to ask you, if I plug in number 4 out there, where does it go? That's real easy. All you got to do is count. But the first thing I'm going to ask you when you walk in is what the first thing you do when you come in the room is. And this is really important. It's a 3-part checklist that you're going to do every time, so write this down. When you first walk in the room, you're going to first mute the board. You are second going to check the preamps to make sure all the gain is turned down. On these red preamps, that's the big silver knob on each one of these channels. On the silver preamps, it's the big knob on the left for each of these channels. Just make sure they're turned down. And the third thing you're going to really make sure of is no phantom power is on any of the preamps. On the reds, that's real easy because it's that big red button, not this big red button, but the big red button on each one of the channels. On the 4710, it's a little harder. It's the top left switch that says plus 48 on it. There are no lights for it, so you just have to check that all of those switches are down. So that's the 3 things. You're going to check that the board's muted, gain is down, and phantom power is off. You're going to do that 3 times during the session. The first is when you first come in. The second is when you finish your session and before you break down. And the last is before you leave the room, because you don't want to leave phantom power. You want to make absolutely sure that nothing is set up for the next person to break something, because you'll get in trouble for that too. Okay. So let's see here. The next thing I'm going to ask you to do is answer some questions about about saving sessions. So let's go to this desktop here. So you'll see 2 hard drives on the screen here, the Mac HD and the HD2. The Mac HD is where the operating system is housed. Do not ever save your sessions to the desktop or the Mac HD. The desktop is on the Mac HD, so that's you don't want to save there. You'll get permissions issues, you'll get disk permission, disk allocation issues and stuff. And many times I've told people not to do this. I walk in when they're having problems and there's a session folder right on the desktop and they somehow manage to lose all their work. So don't make that mistake. Save to the HD2. That being said, though, if you have an SSD, which I highly recommend you get, like a solid state drive, those you can run right off of. So you can either plug into the USB hub here, or plug into the USB-C ports on the computer itself here, and you can run your session right off of it without having to worry about any of that. So I highly recommend that. Spinning hard drives, like the spinning external hard drives, I wouldn't recommend very much. It's hit or miss whether you're going to be able to work off of them well. And flash drives, don't even try it, especially if you're recording. It's not going to work. If you have one of those two things, you can still work in here. You just got to copy and paste your stuff over to the HD2 before you work on it. And not just right into the HD2. Make a folder with your name and class on it, and save your stuff in there. Even if you do have a SSD, feel free to use that hard drive as a backup hard drive. Just before you're done, copy your stuff over onto it, and yeah, just use it as a backup. Okay, so for the test, after you answer my questions and stuff, and we talk about the where you save your stuff, we're gonna go into a Pro Tools session. This is gonna be like our mock session, and it's just going when we start it up. There it is. Let me get rid of this. There's going to be a session, and it's going to look like this. I'm going to ask you to create 3 tracks on it. One is going to be an audio track labeled Vox for my voice. The next one is going to be an aux input, and that's going to be labeled Verb, and that's going to be reverb for my voice. And then the last one is just going to be a master fader. Does everybody know how to do that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So does everybody know how to use buses to route an audio track into an aux track and then put a reverb plug-in on it? Good. We don't need a demonstration of that. It's okay if we do, but yeah, just let me know. Then I'm going to ask you to do one last routing thing and send something to the headphones. I'll walk you through that though. So let's see here. After that, I'm going to take you into the main room here, and inside you're going to find a microphone stand, a cable, and a microphone. I'm going to ask you to set that up for me, and this is really important, another pass-fail thing, that if you don't do right, I have to fail you, is the order you set them up in. You have a mic stand, a cable, and a mic, and you have to set it up in that order. Mic stand, cable, run from the wall over to the mic stand, and then lastly you put the mic up on it. The reason for that is you're going to be working with about a $100 mic that's really durable, but what happens when you're working with like a $5,000 microphone? You do not want to have that up on a high stand while you're walking around and running cables and stuff. And especially when you're working with drums later, you're not going to want to have like $8,000 microphones up at once while you're trying to weave through them and run cables. You just don't want to do that. Always mic last. I don't care if you run the cable second or first. It doesn't matter to me, just as long as the microphone is last. And then when that comes to breaking down, it's the opposite. Don't care how you do it, just make sure the mic comes down first. Okay? But you're gonna, I'm just gonna check the mic. You're gonna record my voice in here. Everybody knows how to record, right? In Pro Tools. And then we're gonna wrap up. So remember, we're going to before we break down, we're gonna do that checklist again. We're gonna mute the board, turn down all the gain on all the preamps, and check for phantom power. And then you're gonna break down in that reverse order: mic first, cables, and mic stand. Pack them all up. We'll come back in here and we'll kind of debrief and you'll sign some papers and then you pass the test. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so there's one last thing that I need to tell you guys. It's a safety thing. One of the easiest and only ways you're going to be able to break equipment in here. Everything else is line level. You're not at great risk for messing stuff up. The only problem is what's called a feedback loop. And the main rule to avoid this is whenever there's a live mic up in this room, you want to be you want to make sure the board is muted if that door is open. So sorry, let me say that again. That was a little awkward. If there's a live mic up in that room, that door must remain closed. If you need to go in between rooms to do stuff, you need to mute the board first. We had a student. The reason this rule exists is we had a student have the speakers up cranked. He had a gain cranked with a mic in there. He went in to adjust something. The pickup room noise from the mic went through the speakers, cycled through, and created a feedback loop, and he blew out about a $3,000 speaker.
Oh my God.
So don't ever do that. That's why we need to always mute the board when going between rooms. Basically whenever that door opens, you're gonna mute the mic. Or mute the board, I'm sorry. Are there any questions? I know it kind of goes all around the place there, but it's a pretty easy test.
Can we have that checklist, or is that like? a
Unfortunately, you
cheat?
can't.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. You're not the first to ask, but we can't.
Yeah.
If I give you the checklist, also doesn't make that much sense. It's more of just a reminder for me. But most of the stuff, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna lead you in and then just be like, okay, do it. No, I'm gonna ask you questions like, what's the first thing you do when you come in the room, or we're just gonna make sure that we follow all the safety stuff. All this stuff is just to make sure you don't break anything and owe the school a bunch of money, or to make sure you don't hurt yourself, like blast something, blow out your ears. Like it's all just safety stuff. So real quick, what do we do when we when we do the first checklist? What's on the first checklist that we do? What are the three things?
Mute the board.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing I believe was to check to make sure there was no phantom power.
No phantom power and
Okay.
no gain on the preamp.
gain.
Turn the gain down.
Couldn't find the word.
Yeah, that's the main things there. And we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna do that checklist 3 times. Once before we start, when you first walk in. Second time right before we break down, and third time right before we leave. Make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
All right. So you guys are just grab me in the hallway. I'm always around.